Good evening, Shortcuts. This is Stephen here. This is video one for this week. This is a list that will go out. It's quite a special list, I'll explain in a second. 9 o'clock on Wednesday evening. That will be Sydney time on Wednesday 29th of November. The last Shortcuts list of November. I've been invited by Mike, who's a member of the club, to have a stall at this Saturday's Paddington Market in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And in the process of putting the stall together, I noticed that I've got a bunch of doubles and really interesting records. And so it's quite a long list, so I'm going to shoot through them pretty quick, other than maybe the first few, because I'd like you guys to see what's going in some of the crates. Now, this list is a classic rock and pop and soundtrack list, but there is a really interesting jazz and blues and soul list to come shortly after. So let's get into it. So all of these will be in the crates on Saturday, but I wanted you folks to have first crack. So let's start here. This is the Japanese first press of Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy. Now, there are several bands that when I have some folks over for a listening night, for playing some music, that I use as exemplars of why I love Japanese vinyl so much. And there are actually three of them coming up in a row here. Now, I've got a copy of Thin Lizzy's Jailbreak already. I am on a mission to get every single Thin Lizzy album on Japanese vinyl. It is indescribable how much better they are than Aussie copies. Now, I have recently procured a UK first press of Jailbreak, and Joseph, you are well aware of how and where that happened. And it's pretty good, but it's not. I still don't think it's as good as the Japanese first press. It's amazing. It's so deep and full, and the band sound incredible. You know, Phil Lynott. Born in South, I think, Brixton, but moved to London, moved to, what was the name? A suburb in Dublin when he was 6 or 7 years of age. He would have been the only black kid, for sure, but his personality is such a handsome, amazing bass player, amazing singer. And on this record, Jailbreak, he sings Cowboy Song. He's the writer, he is the sole writer of 6 out of these 8 tracks, or maybe 5, but he's an awesome writer. And the Cowboy Song starts off with Phil Lynott on practically, kind of like an acoustic guitar and harmonica, and then breaks into this incredible lament. I think he kind of considered himself to be a cowboy. He was a legend, and Jailbreak is fantastic. More Japanese Lizzy to come. I found a few doubles, but man, I had to start off with it because it's just indescribably good. And when you see what it beat into second place, you'll understand how much I love that pressing of Jailbreak. This is the second record on tonight's list. This is the Japanese first press of Exile on Main Street. It includes all the inners. It's got the full cardboard. The full cardboard. In fact, it might be the second press. I have to double check. It's either first or second. I know it's the same press as the one I've got on my shelf because I noticed I got the double. So why do I love this so much? Well, I'm just going to show you some of the other extras that are all there. Digital represses of 70s Rolling Stones are incredibly disappointing, thin, trebly, just kind of, they don't sound like a rock band. They haven't got bottom. Now, Sticky Fingers, particularly Exile on Main Street, are not audiophile recordings. They are not Steely Dan. They are not Roxy Music coming up. They're something else. Everything bleeds into each other. The vocals are buried in the mix on a lot of these tracks. But when you've got the acoustic country of sweet Virginia, or the I don't know, the blues songs, all shaken down, soul survivor, gospel songs. Happy. It's just a magnificent record, and I've not heard a better copy than that Japanese copy, and for that reason, it gets highlighted here. It's bloody great. I had a couple at the last market, and they all went, and both the buyers became club members, and you know who you are. So, yeah, it's pretty fabulous. It's not cheap. It's like, probably $115, $120, but you're going to pay, I don't know how much you pay now for the digital represses, where they try and sell you a whole bunch of crap that sounds awful as extras. Just don't do it. It's worth it. All right, now third in this kind of lead-off list before we move into a bit of a speed round is Elvis Costello's third record, Armed Forces. Now, in the UK, that was the sleeve, and in Australia, that was the sleeve. But in the US, that was the sleeve, and that's also what was used in the Japanese first press with Obi. Now, this record is in immaculate condition. Starts off with Accidents Will Happen. It's obviously still pretty angry, Elvis Costello, but it's also the band, I think, are really finding their chops on this record. They sound great. Now, what is wonderful about the Japanese first press is that there is an additional EP, and you can see, I got it upside down? No. Elvis Costello sold out June 4th at the Hollywood High. It's Elvis Costello and the Attractions live at the Hollywood High. And it's Accidents Will Happen and Allison. But what I love, can you see that they misspell accidents? Adsense. Look at that. Adsense. Typical Japanese. It's a beautiful thing. I have 2 copies of this on the shelf. Someone should own this. It's great, and it sounds wonderful as well. Now, another of the bands that I will 100% hold up anything they do on Japanese vinyl against any pressing, even these audiophile pressings, is Roxy Music. Now, this record, their third record, their first record without Brian Eno, is genius. The first 5 Roxy Music records, and I think you guys have heard me say this before, I would hold those first 5 up against any run of 5 records of any band ever. Now, they do love their kind of pervy sleeves. We all know that. This one's no exception. It's got the Japanese biography. It has everything that the band released. And that's because this is the 1988 repress on EG Records, which was the original record label. It's very rare. It has never been sold on Discogs. I've got all of this series on my shelf, bar one, which I cannot find the debut record. They are so good, so incredibly good. Like, one of our club members, Jonathan, bought Siren, which I think I had on the last week or week before, and we kind of played a little bit here. The opening track, "Love Is the Drug," and it just bounds out of the speakers. This repress is crazy. So there's none sold in Discogs, one for sale for some ridiculous amount, $150 or whatever. Those 5 sonically I hold up against any copies of those records. And they're the copies I have on my shelf. Now, I'm going to run quickly through a bunch of others that are really interesting. And as I get toward the end, there are going to be records that you've seen before, but I just want to get, because I got a bunch of new members who might not know some of these Japanese presses. I'm going to run through them pretty quick. As I said, I'd rather you folks have them than some random at the market, but this is what this is all about. Now, I've got two 60s records that have Japanese presses. Now, this one is a 1966 Japanese first press, and it's pretty interesting. This is the Animals, Inside Looking Out. Now, in Japan, it was called Inside Looking Out, which was the lead-off single. In the rest of the world, it was called Animalism. Of course, Eric Burdon on lead vocals. But what's interesting about this record is that they completely refreshed the band from the original two Animals albums. And this band are significantly better than the others. This vinyl is fantastic. Heavy slab of kind of mid-60s cut. Made in Tokyo, Japan. My favorite track on this record, and I will admit that I am not a huge Animals fan, but I am a John Lee Hooker fan. And there's a track, it's the third track in side one, called Maudie, where Eric Burdon actually introduces that it's a John Lee Hooker song and explains that when John Lee Hooker plays the song live, he always adds a spontaneous new verse. And you can hear that it's a John Lee Hooker song because you've just got one chord. It is a song that depends on charisma as much as melody, i.e. there is none. But the band crack into it and they do a great job. And this really is a great lead into this record. Now, this is the Kink Controversy, which was the Kinks' third record. Now, this is also, I'm pretty sure it was also 1966. Now, the Kink Controversy was kind of a fun little play on the fact that they always fought and were ridiculous to each other on stage, to the extent that their career in the US got absolutely curtailed because they were banned from playing live there, which I think is the reason why they became so English. I mean, the Village Preservation Society or any of those kind of those records, Arthur and the Fall of Civilization, all coming from an English perspective because really that was their only market. This record, when you listen to it, they sound like the Rolling Stones. They're a full-on, loud, rockin' R&B blues based band, and so it sounds great, and it's like the Kinks are just incredible songwriters and players, and so yes, brilliant album. I think that is either a 79 or 81 press because they did a couple of runs of it, but it's really, really cool. All right, now for something completely different. I've got a run. Actually, I might do... I'm just going to do them in the order they're here. It's a bit of a random order. This is the Aussie first press of Wasp, The Last Command. I have a bunch of kind of cock rock metal, I don't know, what do you call them, hair metal records from the 80s that I picked up in a collection ages ago. And I'm just, they're not for me, but I know people love them, like Blackie Lawless and the band. As is always this thing with me, it is in immaculate condition. Wasps, The Last Command. I also have a couple of sealed records. Now, this one is new. This was only released a couple of weeks ago. It is the new repress of Shout at the Devil. Motley Crue's controversial because of the use of a pentagram on the inside sleeve record that kind of launched their career. 4 times platinum, Looks to Kill, Too Young to Fall in Love, and the title track Shout at the Devil. This is the red-black vinyl with alternative cover, as you can see. So, yeah, I don't know, $60, $70 in the shops, probably I don't know, 40, 45. And I also have a sealed earlier pressing of Kid A Amnesia, which is the triple album that combines Kid A and Amnesia, which is that sleeve, with an additional record which is remixes and B-sides from the singles of that time. So it is basically the ultimate compendium of anything Radiohead from that period after OK Computer through to, I guess, what did they do? Hail to the Thief, which I think is probably their worst record. I'm a big fan of Amnesia. This record, Kid A, took me a while, but I now recognize it is a work of genius. So that's still sealed as well. All right, soundtracks. I've had a few copies of this over the last little while. I love this. Michael Antonioni's soundtrack to Zabriskie Point, which was famous / infamous because it had 3 Pink Floyd songs, maybe 2 Grateful Dead songs, and a few smattering of others. I would hold Zabriskie Point up against any soundtrack of any movie ever. It is that good. Interestingly, the music that the Pink Floyd, as they're described on the sleeve, put forward included a little known track at the time called Us and Them, which became the centerpiece, of course, of Dark Side of the Moon. But Antonioni didn't like it. Where's the sleeve? Amazing. Subsequent reissues of this record have included other Floyd songs that they put forward and other Grateful Dead songs into like double LP kind of slabs, but it's pretty hard to get through. It's a slog. This record's amazing. All right, I've got 2 Aussie first presses of some Sabbath records. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Mob Rules. Of course, this with Ronnie James Dio and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath with the mighty Ozzy Osbourne. Both, as I hope you would know from me now, immaculate condition records. I've played all of these. They play great. Nothing comes on these lists that doesn't play great. Sabbath, double bill. I always like to put a little band on that maybe some of you wouldn't have heard of that you can go and explore. So I've introduced a few of you to the sound, the shoes. In fact, I'm just going to say, I'm going to pull this one forward. Some of you have been pinging me about shoes. A few weeks ago, I had Present Tense, which was the album that the Shoes made, and a beautiful power pop record. But a lot of people at the time who were fans of the band considered the demos that were written, and they're not quite demos, they're still pretty solid studio versions, but they weren't given the sheen that the producers of their first album gave them. They were a little bit rawer, a little bit more of the live sound. And that record was then released in, I think it was the early 90s. And this is it. I don't know how I've ended up with 2 copies. I bought this one recently without realizing that I already had it. It's in fantastic condition, still in the shrink wrap. And it's Shoes. It sounds great. It's just so good. So it's the demo 78 to 79. So think spiky power pop, just magnificent. Anyway, the band that I was going to talk about, who are a little bit different, are these guys, the Monochrome Set. And the album's called Love Zombies. Look at that sleeve, isn't that magnificent? So I love New Wave, and the Monochrome Set were New Wave band, British band from the early 80s, who were always a little bit left of centre. They always reminded me a little bit more of American indie at the time, so the likes of Pere Ubu, or the Minutemen, or those types of bands. What you get with the monochrome set, particularly this record, Love Zombies, is a mixture of instrumentals, and sometimes the instrumentals have this kind of indie rumba sounds. It's kind of like, hard to describe. You have to, but then the next track will be this perfectly executed new wave guitar pop that is not a million miles away from the Smiths. You can absolutely hear that Bell and Sebastian must have loved the monochrome set. They must have done. They are absolutely bedfellows. It's an odd, unusual, somewhat obscure record that I adore. All right, I've got a couple of Aussie records here. I've got the Divinyls debut record, the soundtrack to Monkey Grip. Of course, Christine Amphlett was in this movie, and some of these songs were refreshed and maybe given a different sheen and appeared on the Divinyls formal debut record shortly afterwards. But that's that. And I also have this. I cannot believe I got 2 copies of this, but that's, I think, for someone's benefit. I love the Sonny Boys. They're a recent discovery of mine, recent as in the last couple of years. And this third record, Get Some Fun, is so good. I mean, I don't think it's quite as good as their iconic self-titled debut album with that beautiful pale blue sleeve. But this record's fantastic, and there you go. Now I'm going to run through a couple of Japanese presses of classic records that are going to go in the box, but if any of you want them, please sing out. Now, this is one of my favorites. It's the Japanese picture disc of Footloose, and no, it's not empty. It's right here. There you go. Look at that. Beautiful thing. And as has been remarked upon by me and by others in the club, Japanese picture discs sound pretty damn good. All right. We also have another Stones record. This is Goat's Head Soup. I think maybe their most underrated record. And I always like to show people the Japanese press included the Goat's Head Soup little mini poster. It's in fantastic condition. This is a guilty pleasure of mine, and you know what? I don't really care, because it has one of my favourite songs of the 70s right down the line, the Japanese first press of Night Owl by Jerry Rafferty. It's magnificent. I love this record. This is a true guilty pleasure. And of course, it's got Baker Street. Just brilliant. Belladonna, Stevie Nicks, again, the Japanese first press. Stop Dragging My Heart Around with Tom Petty, the legendary deceased and missed. Now, 2 pop juggernauts, Michael Jackson's Bad and Madonna's Like a Prayer, pristine Japanese first presses. So that finishes us off. You can see these are they're going to go to crate. I think they'll be pretty popular. Oh, there's one other. I have Talking Heads. This is a really, really lovely press of Little Creatures, which is important because this is one of my t-shirts. Oh gosh. That's not what I meant to do. But this is The Road to Nowhere. This is the road to nowhere, which of course is on Little Creatures. All right, there you have it. Sorry about dropping the phone at the end. Gone way over time, but that always happens. Hope you enjoyed the list. Hit me up if you want to know anything more. And hang around for list 2. Bye.